Hi, everyone. So I'm live. Wonderful. Um, can can I confirm that my screen is being shared here? Okay. I'm going to assume that my screen is being shared properly. My name is Ian Chun. I am the CEO of a company called Matcha Latte Media, and I run a tea company called Life. A tea, sorry, not a tea company, but a website. Matcha Latte Media is my company that has gone through was started in 2012 and went through a accelerator program in 2014, taking on some funding from a venture capital firm to launch Unomi as a marketplace to bring Japanese tea producers onto the global stage. Today, what I would like to do is talk about um, planning a new tea business. Particularly, what I would like to do is talk about planning an online tea business, is because that is what we are doing currently, and that is also the type of business that I see most from people who are inquiring to buy wholesale from me. And one of the major things that I think is really important in terms of planning your new company is to do a proper cash flow planning. And that's what I'd like to spend the bulk of my time doing, talking about today. So just a quick introduction. I'm originally from Honolulu, Hawaii. I came to Japan as a study abroad program in 1999, and I was studying Japanese literature. So I do speak Japanese quite fluently. I spent some time in teaching English and working as a magazine editor for a Hawaii travel magazine and a surfing magazine before doing my master's in Japanese literature at Sophia University, or Asian Studies. Then I worked at a company called Wacom. They make pen tablets for a couple of years. And during that time, I learned a lot about business and a lot about marketing. And this was also a time when it was not easy to create your own e-commerce site. And I was placed in charge of doing e-commerce for Wacom in Asia Pacific. So we launched e-commerce sites for the company in Australia, Thailand, and a number of other countries. So I picked up a lot of knowledge about creating online stores from this experience, as well as marketing. And then I quit my job in order to follow my wife while she did her MBA in the United States. And at that time, I had just happened to meet Matsumoto-san from Kyoto Obubu tea farms, and he kind of dragged me into the tea industry. And that was the start of my helping Japanese tea farmers go global. In 2012, I had picked up a number of different farms as clients at that point, and I decided to pull them all into one single brand, and that was Unomi. So I've learned a lot, and I've made a lot of mistakes over the past 8 years in building Unomi up into a proper company. Currently, this year, we are a profitable company with 6 employees. And I think maybe we're doing close to $500,000 in sales. So I'd like to take that experience, and hopefully this will help to inform those of you who are thinking about starting your own online tea stores, as well as not just online tea stores, but tea businesses in general. Oh, this was another thing. So that was the timeline. So what we are doing as a company is a startup, and startup in terms of thinking about it as a kind of Silicon Valley type startup. And actually, we started out with doing that, and so we spent a lot of money on trying to focus on rapid growth and create large scale with the company. And that is one of the reasons why we are the way we are right now, even though we're not a really big company. If you start out as a lifestyle brand and you're not taking the type of risks that we were taking, it may be difficult to bring your company up to a level where you can quit your full-time job, for example. But it should not be impossible. That is my opinion. And so we spent a lot of money on trying to get customers to our website, to build different functionality into the website. And so we actually wasted a lot of money doing that. And one of the major things that I learned from that is proper cash flow planning. So before we get into the cash flow issues, I wanted to take you through the idea of creating a new company. So this is my solution or my planning setup. And the things that I think about when I think about new projects, and that could be a new company as well. So we want to find a problem in the market, or a potential need in the market. You need to analyze the market properly, and that's the major thing to do. And there could be many different types of ways you engage the tea industry, but not necessarily selling retail. There are different players involved in the supply chain, for example, and serving those specific players in different ways can be ways that you could create a business that is centered around tea. Taking a look at different customers and different types of customer profiles. For example, if you're selling to people who love tea, that's one thing. That's one type of customer. But if you're selling to, for example, people who are athletes and who love tea, that's another type of customer. If you're selling to people who love yoga and love tea, that's another type of customer. And you can cater your products as well as your brand, as well as the teas that you offer specifically to those customers, and at different prices. So that would be the solution to the problem that you identified. And that could be the entire business itself. It could be the product, or it could be the brand that you're selling. And people don't think about the brand as a product, but the brand itself is something that you're selling a consumer in terms of what the value that they're getting out of your product as a brand is the lifestyle that you're proposing to them. You're proposing a lifestyle to them as a brand. And then when you're doing the planning for your company, one of the major mistakes that I had made, I built my company with really great people, but they were people who had similar skill sets that I did. And I think it's very important when you start your new company, to build your company with people besides yourself, if possible, who have a different set of skills than you do. So if you know tea very well and you want to create an online tea business, you should find somebody who is, as a partner, who is really good at building online websites, or perhaps doing online marketing very well. Different types of skill sets that can complement your own. And if you can do that as a partner when you first start, then you don't really need you don't have to worry initially about personnel costs, because you're in it together, at least initially anyway. And then the next important thing is to create a goal for yourself. How much do you want to make from your company in terms of monetary revenue, and then create this is what we're going to do, is create a cash flow plan that allows you to plan exactly what you're going to do and how much you're going to spend as a result of the activities that you do. When you initially start, you're going to need initial startup capital for some reason. Even if you're starting, if your plan is to sell $1,000 worth of tea or €1,000 worth of tea in the first year, you're still going to need a couple €100 to start your business to purchase that tea. And once we look at, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but once you take a look at the things that you need to do over the course of the year to sell your tea, you can start to realize that you actually need more money than just simply buying the tea supply itself. If you're looking into starting a business that is more of a startup business from the very beginning, in terms of we're going to, grow very fast from the very start, then there's a lot of ways to raise funds for that. If you're confident enough in your idea that you can go to friends and family, that's the initial way to start raising money. The major thing about getting money from friends and family is that it is friends and family. So make sure that you tell your friends and family that they could lose all of their money the next year if you're not successful at your idea. There are lots of accelerator programs that you can go through who will teach you how to create a startup as well as give you money to do it in exchange for part ownership of the company. And then there are professional investors and investment firms who, if you have a great idea, then they will give you some money to do it. Often when you're thinking about going to investors in that sense, the major thing that they're looking for is that you have a proper plan, and that plan is reasonably feasible. Investors who are more interested in finding the next Facebook, for example, are interested in crazy ideas that might be feasible, and then they'll look at the managers of the company, you and your partners, to see whether you and your partners are people who are worth investing in, whether the idea may actually be not maybe crazy, and the crazier is sometimes is the better. But if they look at you as a manager, then they might be willing to invest in you. When you create a management team with partners, you should definitely have a contract. So doing it yourself is great, but it's very difficult to start a new business. So finding people who can share in that experience with you is, I think, very important. Now, let's get into tips on your planning, and we're going to get into the spreadsheet itself as well. I think that any business should have a formula for the revenue that comes in. If you're going to sell tea online, and selling tea online is a easy example of having a revenue formula. You have exposure of your brand. You have exposure of your brand to people on, for example, search engines like Google. Actually, Google is probably the only search engine. Then you have exposure on social media, for example, and advertising. That exposure leads to people that come to your website, traffic to your website, and that traffic leads to a purchase. And then we can make assumptions for that formula. So, for example, I'm making an assumption here of 1% of the people exposed to the brand visit your website. So for every 1,000 people who see your Instagram post, one person will visit your website. And then if we have 1% of those website visitors place an order, that means for every 100 visitors, you get one order, which also means that if you have 100, you would need 100,000 people viewing your Instagram in order to get one order. That sounds daunting, but the viewership, the exposure it's set to 0.1% because there are actually a lot of people viewing even small accounts for Instagram, for social media. And then there's other ways to get exposure as well. The average order I'm setting at $50 because it's convenient, and a gross margin, meaning of $50. So when we build a spreadsheet, we can adjust this, but this is something that I think would be reasonable to start with, reasonable assumptions. In terms of expenses, you should be calculating, thinking about it in three ways. Fixed costs, costs that don't really change depending on your number of orders that you get. That actually is kind of misleading because fixed costs will change as your business grows. And that's the problem with thinking about fixed costs as being really fixed. It's not really fixed. If you're, for example, if you're renting if you're using, a spare bedroom in your apartment for storage, and you start just selling really well, you're going to have to then borrow a warehouse to increase their storage space. And if you grow even further, you need to increase you need to get a bigger warehouse, and that will increase your costs as well. So those fixed costs will change over time in your business. And to assume that it will be fixed forever is one of the biggest mistakes, or it's at least one of the mistakes that I made in the beginning. The variable costs can include for online sales, cost of goods, of course, the cost of the goods that you're purchasing. Shipping fees will change. As the more orders you get, the more you'll pay in shipping. Transaction fees, as well as promotional fees. And then the other cost that is both fixed and variable are personnel costs. And that's one of the hardest things to calculate. In the beginning, obviously, it's just you. If you have partners, just you and your partners, and you're all doing things yourself. If you're not paying yourself until you've gotten bigger, then that's one way to think about it. But eventually, you're going to need staff to help you out. And even if you don't need staff to help you out in the beginning, you should still be calculating, I think at least, you should still be calculating your own costs. And that, if you're going to set a salary for yourself and not pay it, you should still set your plan for your salary. I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make. So we're going to take a look. We're going to close this here. We're going to take a look at the spreadsheet here. Okay. This is very small, so I'm going to increase the size. So this spreadsheet, you can, if you go to this URL, udemy.life/nomad, that will take you directly to the spreadsheet, and you can kind of follow along with what we're doing as we take a look at this. Let's make this a little bit shorter. So I can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people who are viewing it with me. I thank you very much. So this is a kind of this is somewhat based off of my experience running Udemy.life. So we can take a look at some of the, and I'm going to show you how this is being built right now. Okay. So we have here, this is not like a profit loss spreadsheet. This is what it's called a pro forma cash flow. And what we're trying to look here is not to see like how much money profit or loss we're making every month, but we're trying to figure out how much cash is coming in and leaving our business as we operate our business. So, for example, and this is actually a 36-month cash flow spreadsheet. So, in the parameters that are set in here currently shows that we're going to make $600,000 in year 3 by the end of year 3. Isn't that great? $600,000. By the end of year 2, we make $350,000. And the currency doesn't really matter too much. Obviously, you can set this into euro or your own currencies. I'm American, so I think in dollars. In the first year, so I guess take a look at the first year. This is set to be $67,000 with $12,000 profit. And I think currently this is set that way without paying yourself. So if you don't pay yourself any money at all, and you make $11,000 profit, and that's $12,000 profit, and that becomes your pay. one of the problems here is that you can never have negative cash flow. You have to have cash coming in from somewhere. Even if you lose a lot of money one month, in order to pay your bills, you still got to pay your bills, right? So even if you're not making money, you've got to have the cash coming in from somewhere. So that could mean a loan from somebody, for example. So I have an initial startup capital here, sitting here. So if we change that to $10,000, then this disappears. The negative cash flow here disappears and only appears again here. The conversion rate from, this model calculates from orders are calculated based off of the number of sessions or visits to your website. And that's set at 2% right now. And 2% is kind of average for the industry. Obviously, if you build a really great website and you build it in a certain way, you can increase this conversion rate, or you can lower it in certain ways. But 2% is kind of average. And the problem about 2% in the beginning is that it's actually very difficult to get people to buy from you in the very beginning. So that's something that you need to think about. So strangers discovering you for the very first time, you need to build credibility with them. And how do you build that credibility? How do you get them to trust you? Otherwise, your conversion rate could be, very, very low. And I have this again set to $50 in order revenue of $50. Unit price of retail unit price being $10. You get 4 units per order, and shipping of $10. And this is something that obviously that you would need to change. If your shipping is $5, for example, this will change the order revenue to $45. I have set the transaction fee here as 5%. PayPal, I think, takes 3.9% plus 40 cents or something like that. Shopify payments, I think they'll take if you have the cheapest plan, they'll take like 1 to 2% as a transaction fee, plus 3% for PayPal, or plus in addition to PayPal's 3%. So I'm kind of setting it conservatively at 5% here. And then I set the cost of goods at 33%, and sourcing good product in a way that allows you to manage your cost of your goods is going to be a major issue if you start a tea company. And this cost of goods does not take into account, or this calculation doesn't take into account, for example, if you have to import the tea first into your country, then your actual cost of goods, this 33% becomes the cost of buying the goods from the supplier, and the cost of importing, and the cost of, for example, import taxes. And all of that gets put into this 33%. So if you're selling a $10 tea, your budget for your tea is $3.30. But if you have to include, 20% tax, for example, then the amount that you have to budget for your tea becomes smaller and smaller. So that's a very something that you need to think about. And so we could make this this spreadsheet even more complicated by building in that model for the cost of goods there. But we're keeping this simple for today. So the model for generating revenue is based off of the number of website visits that we get. So I've built here a calculation of visits, sessions from advertisements, as well as sessions from social media and sessions from search. In my experience, advertising is something you probably should not do in the very beginning unless you have a lot of money to spend, or unless you're really, really experienced in doing different types of online advertising. And you can target your ads right here, this is targeted so that the cost of an ad is 50 cents per click. And so that if we wanted to generate 6,000 clicks, we would need to spend $3,000. Is that right? $3,000 if we wanted to create 6,000 clicks on visits to your website. But all of these sessions that are generated from these methods, you can add something in here like PR, for example. If you're doing different types of PR, you put this in. So if you have a PR campaign every month that will generate 1,000 website visits. And you may not know, but this is your assumption, and your assumption would be your target, for example. And then you can copy and paste and just drag it all the way into here. So what I've done with the search here is I started at 250 sessions per search. And then if you can see in the formula, 1.5, meaning that you're increasing by 50% every month. And how you do that is magic. I don't know how you're going to do that. We can talk about, that's probably a conversation for an entire day's worth of sessions. But according to this, and this may or may not be reasonable, but by your month 12, you're generating 9,000 website visits simply from search. But let's assume that this somehow works. And then the rate of growth goes down after 6 months, and that's how I calculated it. And by year 2, we're generating 10% growth month over month. By year 3, it's becoming 1% growth month over month. So I've set it so that it plateaus. Okay. So at 2% conversion rate, you can see that this is generating this amount of orders. And then what I've also done is calculated in a returning customer rate of 30%. So if 30% of your customers that come initially come back for a new order, then that generates this number right here. And so if we look at the formula for this, this assumes that they will come back in 2 months to purchase again. You can set the formula differently. This spreadsheet you should be able to copy this spreadsheet into your own so that you can do it yourself and play with it yourself. So these two orders combined, and I've done a calculation of the number of units that are being made, and I made a mistake and I didn't include these orders either. Let's recalculate this. Plus, if you're not familiar with spreadsheets, this dollar sign means that it doesn't change. So even if you copy this here, this dollar sign means that this column doesn't change. So we're going to drag this all the way down here. We want to know the number of units, because the number of units that are being sold is something that will help you to plan. Why is this the same? 138. Oh, it's the same because it's the same number of orders. The number of units here helps you to plan how many units you're going to need to purchase. So assuming you're going to need to purchase it beforehand, that means when you need to spend that money is here in month 1. So I've calculated this to be G32 to D32 to G32. So I've calculated this so that you purchase inventory once every 4 months. So you purchase in month 1 for months 2 through 5. So assuming that you're going to need, assuming that you sell as much as you do, this amount of money, this amount of orders, this amount of products sold is going to cost you this amount of money. So we could actually do this a different way. For example, if we wanted to purchase a little bit more than what we plan to sell, we can round up to, I think it's 2 or 3. I want to get this to, I don't know, -3. All right, so it's $6,000. We're going to spend $6,000 on stock that we're going to sell for $5,400 worth. And so this is not the value of the stock that is being sold at retail value, but it's the value of the stock of the cost of goods. So that, remember that 33%. So we take that and we copy it for every 4 months because we're going to need to restock every 4 months at least. And so that's where the cash flow part comes into play, because if you're going to plan to sell that amount of money and you don't have the amount to initially purchase that there, then we take this out, then you have, it becomes negative here, so we can't have that done. So let's assume that we're going to try to sell a lot in the first 6 months. That will require initial capital of well, 6,400 or at the very least, so 10,000. Okay. Let's see. Where am I? So the fixed expense. I have 3 sections for fixed expense right here. I have rent. I'm just setting this arbitrarily at $1,000, and we're going to start in month 7. So between months 1 and 6, we're just going to have no physical space. I guess we're going to use our own apartment or house for our space, office space. Then we're going to spend $100 on IT. That's the website system that you're going to need to use. And then we're just going to have an extra slush fund of $300 per month that might go to various different things. Obviously, this will change for everybody, every single situation. For variable, we have a transaction fees of 5%. If you remember, this marketing budget can be set in different ways, but here it's set that we have, we're spending this amount of money. So let's actually delete that if we're not going to spend that amount of money. So when you delete that, the transaction fee is changed. And the transaction fee is changed because this marketing budget, the advertisement, is generating sales for you, theoretically. And that will change the transaction fees, and it will change the shipping costs. So it didn't change the shipping costs here because the amount of people that are coming in are so low. What I've started to do here is that the advertising budget is then calculated at a certain amount plus 10% of the revenue generated. That's kind of planning that you might want to do once you start getting going. The important thing here is to realize when your cash is going out and when your revenue is coming in. So if, for example, if you're doing a wholesale business and your revenue isn't going to come in until the month following your sale, then where your cash comes in and goes out is going to be different. So it's not going to come in that month, but it's going to come in the next month, and that will affect your cash flow. That's really important, especially for wholesale businesses. And usually what you do in that case is you have a contract with your buyer, and with that contract, say that buyer wants to buy $5,000 worth of tea from you, and you have to prepay for your tea, then you're gonna have to get that $5,000 from somewhere. If the buyer is not going to pay you till after they receive it. Then the final thing that I've calculated in this spreadsheet is is salaries. So I've kind of set salaries here, director, manager, part-time staff. So if we start off paying ourselves, if we wanted to start off calculating our salary into this budget spreadsheet, but not actually pay ourselves, I think that's actually a good way to think about it. So obviously, if you're paying yourself a salary, you're going to lose a lot of money very quickly, immediately. So we're just going to say, if we're going to pay ourselves $3,000 a month and not actually pay ourselves, then we're going to add in here $36,000 that is both, it kind of cancels each other out. Change that. So your cash balance starts decreasing until we get to here, and you need to buy a tea again, and you don't have enough cash because even though you're generating revenue, you're not, your expenses reduce your cash. So that means that that if things are going well, and if things go well enough, you'll earn $350,000 at the end of year 2, but you're going to need money you're going to need to get money somehow at this point in stage. Oh, you're going to need money again here, and obviously this is because you're going to need to purchase inventory for the next 4 months. Oh, you're going to need money again here. And so this is how a cash flow shows you. A cash flow spreadsheet shows you how to plan out your business. Okay, let's see. Is that everything that I wanted to mention? One last thing. Part-time staff. I actually have a formula for calculating this part-time staff, primarily because I'm doing my own shipping and I have my part-time staff doing my shipping. And so what I've done is created a formula that says that the number of orders that are made divided by 100 orders per month is the number of staff that I need. Not all staff are doing shipping. So that if we're going to hire people, depending on the number of people that we're, depending on the scale of our business, then we want to be able to manage it in terms of the number of orders that we come in. So I'd have it set so that if you have 300 orders or more coming in, up to 400 orders, then we have three part-time staff to manage that. Now, 100 orders per month might be a little bit too low. So if we change that to 200 orders per month, the number of staff that we need is reduced, and that also reduces our costs. Okay, so this is kind of a simplistic version of an online tea business. And the difference between this, this is not specific to a tea business. However, what is specific to the tea business is the conversion rate and the unit price. So you might be selling like $30 teas. If you're just going to sell $30 teas, that's great. But how many units per order do you think you might be getting for a $30 tea? Like 1.5. Some people order 1 unit, some people order 2 units, some people order 3 units. So we take an average of 1.5 units per order. That changes things. So this allows you to kind of play with parameters and set your own goals for what you're trying to do if you're starting a tea business. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to talk about. And so I'm good. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions about, we can move to questions to talk about how this works, or about starting about my experience starting Unomi as a tea business. Let me look through the comments and see if there's anything interesting any questions to answer. I am, by the way, I'm drinking some withered kamairicha from Sayama. It's a very nice floral aroma. Thank you, Newton. Thank you, Adrian. So this was, I assume this was a pretty boring lecture, but I hope it was helpful. And this spreadsheet is available for anyone to copy and utilize. I don't think you can edit it directly. However, you should be able to copy it. If you cannot copy it, let me know. And copy it to your own and to be able to play with it yourself. And try to get this PL to be positive. Don't like red numbers. Red numbers are evil. Just copied it? Okay, great. Yeah, it's something that the one thing about starting, at a small level that always worries me when I hear people doing that is that if you're going to start, you buy $500 worth of tea and try to sell it, it takes a long time to get going. So if you start with $500 worth of tea and you try to sell it and make $1,000 or $1,500, the amount of money that you spend trying to sell that, including your own time, makes it difficult for you to keep going. And so that's something that I think is, it can only be solved with more money, really. Obviously, it can only be solved with more money, but starting small is, I guess the blunt way to put it is, it keeps you small. Unless you hit it really, the strategy would be to start small and show that you can sell the tea, and then take it to somebody who will give you money to increase your scale. Okay. Mathematical spin on it. Yes. Well, how were you inspired by Obubu's experience as a startup? How was I inspired by Obubu's experience as a startup?
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
Thanks for the workshops. I'm well. How are you? Hanging there.
This is it's kind of interesting, doing this without an audience who's can react to you. But I hope it's useful.
Yeah, we had some questions, and you were about to answer some of them. Are you available to stay maybe for 5 to 10 minutes?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Which was the question? Yeah.
Newton had a question. How do companies like Unomi compete with Japanese tea providers who have English websites? Unomi is a special case, because what we are doing is we're aggregating tea from hundreds of.
What? Here you go. Sorry about it. I think I clicked the wrong one.
Okay. So I was just explaining. I don't know what I explained. I was talking to myself. I was explaining that Unomi's unique selling proposition is that we are aggregating tea from multiple producers. So we're not, the tea itself may or may not be special that's being sold on our website. But if you wanted to buy tea from multiple producers who are all selling on their own, it would might be cheaper to do so. However, the fact that you have to ship them separately makes it more expensive. And we also investigate, into the teas and the producers and try to provide a lot of information, even more than the producers they might provide themselves. So, but mainly, I think people are buying from us because we were providing access to, 170 suppliers to 1,500 different products all at once. And I think if we often offer, good discounts, especially like on shipping, if you buy a certain amount. So that makes it easier to buy from us than to buy directly from producers. And so that's the problem that we're solving for as a business. And there's lots of different problems in the market, that can be solved. So I would not suggest anybody try to imitate what I did, because it's incredibly inefficient as a business to have 1,500 products and like 5,000 SKUs that all have to be labeled in English, and it's incredibly inefficient, and it takes a lot of money to build it up to this scale. And without that scale, it's difficult. Yes, there are organic products. There are also products that were organic and are no longer organic because we repackaged it ourselves. Organic means that you need to register it with somebody. If you're selling in Japan, you need to register it in Japan. If you're selling it in the United States, you need to register it so that it is registered in the United States. It's more complicated than that, obviously, but and we also have products that are not certified or not registered, but are grown without pesticides, or some of them are grown without fertilizers, or grown without chemical fertilizers. So there's a filter on the website that allows you to search for, or there's an organic filter that allows you to filter for those types of teas. And there's tons of teas on the website. I've kind of lost track of it. And my goal is to have even more. Like if there are thousands, if there's like 30 different, like if there's 30 cultivars and like 10 different regions and 30 different types of tea, that's 30 times 30 times 10, right? That's at least 9,000 teas. That's possible. If you could get all of those teas into one place, and that would be pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. Dan asked, so in the spreadsheet, he could see the sales were increasing. Do you think it was due to the pandemic, or you have other?
For my own sales, my sales have increased partly due to the pandemic, I think. I actually think that there's another reason why, my investigation of it is, yes, people are buying more online because of the pandemic. Second, I think there was a change in Google's search algorithms that kind of favored us. Third, I was very proactive, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, in trying to get out methods to get people tea, like figure out shipping solutions for that. And so we kind of aggressively provided subsidized shipping, especially in the beginning when the Japan post office started suspending shipments to most of the world. Even to the United States, post office has not resumed shipments. But what we're doing is we kind of partnered with somebody to get shipments to the United States in bulk and then have it redistributed through the US Postal Service. And so we kind of figured out those types of solutions. And like the business is often more about logistics than about tea itself. So that's kind of a one thing to think about when if you're successful as a business, are you still, like enjoying your tea? I guess it's better to become successful first than worry about that later, perhaps. But the logistics is very big issue in running a tea company, I think, especially if you're shipping internationally.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing it.
Yeah, I will be in the booth if anybody has any questions. And like my business is open for if you want to ask anything about the business, pretty much everything. I'm pretty transparent with everything.
Before you go to the booth, did you want to address the first one you wanted to say? How were you inspired by Obubu's experience as a startup?
Yeah, that. So it's not Obubu's experience as a startup that inspired me, and actually, I think Matsumoto-san didn't really know the word startup before I met him. I think it was Matsumoto-san as he was not originally a farmer, right? He's he moved to Wazuka to get into the farming industry, agricultural industry, and tea farming. And so one of the issues from the very beginning, one of the issues was that there's a decreasing number of farmers in Japan. They're getting older, and people are not taking up farming or not inheriting their farms. And that was always a big issue for him from the very beginning. And that became a big issue for me as well. It's also the reason why I'm not an Obubu employee. He was trying to get me to join Obubu and move to Wazuka. But what I really wanted to do is help farmers in Japan, help people in the production industries in Japan that are not production industries that are in decline, that are not been able to keep up with modernizing society. That includes not only tea but other types of industries as well. And I think there's a lot of potential for solving, or at least giving more options for expanding markets for these types of producers, especially when the domestic market itself is just disappearing. And so that, like, his passion about that became my passion. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are the way we are right now. Yeah, that was my influence from Obubu.
Thanks. I think
so I'll be in the booth.
Covered.
Yeah.
Ian's gonna be his booth. Please check out the expo part, and then you can click me, and then we'll be able to talk to Ian. Thank you.
Thank you.
And